Today, we're diving into a fascinating climate change mystery. It's a real head-scratcher involving a tiny moth, one of the world's most important crops, and a paradox that has scientists taking a second look at everything.
What if climate change, for all of its destructive impacts, could accidentally solve a massive pest problem? It sounds like a silver lining, right? But as you'll see, the story is way more complicated, and it tells us something really profound about our rapidly changing world.
So here's the puzzle that scientists in East China found themselves staring at. On one hand, you've got farmers seeing less damage to their rice. Great! It seems there are fewer pest moths out in the fields. But at the exact same time, the light traps that scientists use to monitor these bugs, well, they're catching more of them, way more. So how can both be true? Fewer moths doing damage, but more moths in the traps. It just doesn't add up. Let's get into it.
Okay, first things first, let's meet the main character in this drama, the rice leaf roller moth. Now, don't let its size fool you. This moth might be small and it's not a strong flyer on its own, but when they get together, they are one of the most destructive rice pests on the entire planet. We're talking huge economic damage all across Asia.
And the way it causes all this chaos really comes down to its life cycle. The adult lays an egg, but it's the larva, the little caterpillar that hatches, that's the real problem. It has this incredible habit of folding a rice leaf over itself to create a little protective tube. Then it just scrapes away all the good green stuff from the inside. That's why they call it the leaf roller.
And we're not talking about a little bit of nibbling here. A really bad infestation can wipe out over 60% of a rice harvest. 60%! So you can imagine, making this pest disappear would be a massive win for farmers and, honestly, for global food security.
So let's get back to that baffling disappearance and follow the clues that scientists laid out in a recent study.
This is the data that started it all. So let's break it down. Look at the graph on the left. That's from scientists actually counting moths out in the rice paddies. The red line is the average from the early 2000s. The blue line is for the more recent decade. See how that blue line is way down? That's the proof. Fewer pests in the fields. Okay, now look at the graph on the right. This is from the light traps. And here it's the complete opposite. The recent blue line is way higher than the old red one. It's a total contradiction. Fewer moths in the crops, but way more getting caught in the traps. What is going on?
And this wasn't just a fluke, not a blip on the radar. This data covers 24 years from 31 different places, and the pattern is crystal clear. The top line, the trap catches, just keeps going up, but the bottom line, the moths actually found in the fields, keeps going down. These two trends are marching in opposite directions year after year. It's a real sustained phenomenon.
To crack this case, scientists had to look up. The answer, it turns out, wasn't in the rice paddies at all. It was in the sky. It was in the winds of change.
You see, these supposedly weak-flying moths are actually incredible long-distance travelers. For thousands of years, they've been hitching a ride on what's basically a sky highway, the East Asian insect flyway, powered by predictable monsoon winds that carry them for hundreds of kilometers.
But here's the twist. That super reliable highway is becoming dangerously unpredictable. And the study points a finger at one clear culprit for this disruption: climate change. Specifically, it's delaying the annual shift of the summer monsoon.
So how exactly have the winds changed? These maps tell the whole story. On the left, you've got the historic wind patterns in the fall. See all that blue with the arrows pointing south? That was the moth's reliable ride home. But now look at the map on the right. This shows what's been happening recently. The whole pattern has flipped. It's all red, and the winds are blowing north. Their escape route is gone. Instead, the winds are giving them a one-way ticket straight into an ecological dead end.
This whole bizarre phenomenon where nature's signals get crossed actually has a scientific name. It's called an ecological trap. You can also think of it as a kind of Pied Piper effect.
So what exactly is an ecological trap? Well, imagine an animal's instincts, honed over thousands of years, telling it, hey, go this way, this is a great place to live. But because the environment changed so fast, those instincts are now wrong. The animal gets tricked into making a terrible choice, one that leads to its own demise.
And that is precisely what's happening to our moths. They feel these favorable winds blowing north and think, great, time to head to the breeding grounds.
but they're being lured into a trap. They get there too late in the season, the rice plants are too old for their young to eat, and crucially, there are no winds to take them back south. They arrive and they're just stuck. They are doomed to die there without leaving any offspring.
So this all leads us to a really complicated and uncertain future. And it forces us to ask a tough question. At the end of the day, is this good news or bad news?
The consequences are a real mixed bag. In the short term, the benefit seems obvious: less damage to a vital food crop. But the long-term risk is that entire populations of this moth could just be wiped out, which could have all sorts of ripple effects. What about the spiders and birds that eat them? Mostly, it's just a huge, flashing warning sign about how climate change can scramble nature's rulebook in ways we never see coming.
And the scientific study itself concludes, in that very careful language scientists use, that pest problems have ameliorated. From a purely agricultural point of view, that sounds pretty good, right? A problem has gotten better.
And this is a really big but. There is a huge disconnect between what the science is showing and what's happening in the real world. Even though the weather itself is trapping and killing these moths, farmers are still being sold and are still using a whole arsenal of chemicals to fight the very same moth, an arsenal that maybe isn't needed nearly as much anymore.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty chilling thought. This whole story of the disappearing moth is like a giant accidental experiment. It shows how a tiny shift in a huge climate pattern can set a deadly, invisible trap for an entire species. So the question we really have to ask is, as our world keeps changing in these wild, unpredictable ways, what other ecological traps are we setting right now without even realizing it? And what will the consequences be when we finally notice?